This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
Hey.
And we are back for another edition of the Primetime Podcast right here on Most Valuable Podcast. You like college football, you like college basketball, this is the podcast for you, talking about each. We're talking a little bit more college basketball in this one. Got a little bit of football, looking at the NFL draft. We're going to look at the ACC really in this one. We're looking at Duke and how far Marvin Bagley can carry them this season. We're also looking at the Tar Heels of, are they in trouble? Brandon thinks so. We'll find out more about that later on. And then we're looking at NFL draft. Could Saquon Barkley be the numero uno pick in the NFL draft? But a little housekeeping before we begin. Number one, if you like what we're doing here, want to help support us, go ahead and check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. That link is in the description. Also in the description, you want to get your hands on an MVP t-shirt, go ahead. Every information for that is also in the description down below. Thirdly, if you are on, is that a word? Is thirdly a word? I don't think it's a word. I think I created it. Thirdly, if you're on iTunes, or if you have an iTunes, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating for the Primetime Podcast. We would really appreciate it. And last but not least, go ahead and check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. Bookmark it. That's where everything, videos, podcasts, articles, everything goes for MVP, so you never miss a single thing. But let's get into the topics, Brandon. Today, a little quick intro because we got a lot to talk about. First, we're focusing pretty much on the ACC. Like I said, Duke, North Carolina. Let's focus on Duke first. And I know that this segment, like part Duke fans might say, but guys, we blew out the Notre Dame Fighting Irish yesterday, 88-66. However, last two games, I'm a little concerned for the Dukies, Brandon, because you look at the game they played 2 games ago against Virginia where they lost 65-63. And when I look at Duke, you had 30 points from Bagley, 14 from Carter, and then 5, 6, and 8 from the rest of the starters, Duval, Allen, and Trent Jr. The only 2 off the bench were O'Connor and DeLure, who came off the bench. And then you look at, you got the, 22-point win against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But your starters played really well. The rest of your bench didn't really do much. I know more of your bench played. A little bit of them were in trash time. But White and Bolden got the buff of the minutes, only 5 points between them. So the thing I want to ask you, with Duke, it seems like Bagley is the main guy that we all look at from this starting group. Can he be enough to carry Duke and this starting 5 this season?
Well, it can't just be Marvin Bagley. And as we've seen, you look at the games where they've lost. Mm-hmm. When they lost the game against NC State, a couple of weeks back, and then they lose this game against Virginia over the weekend. Bagley has 30 points in that game. Mm-hmm. Who else is stepping up? Nobody. So I think that right now Marvin Bagley, I think, is doing his job. He's doing what he needs to do. He's chipping in their wins. He's really stepping up in their losses. He's the reason why their losses aren't blowout losses, because of his 30 points. Duke needs to be able to have some other guys. Grayson Allen in the loss over the weekend had 5 points. Grayson Allen cannot have 5 points. Grayson Allen, when you say Grayson Allen's name, 1, you think of tripping, and 2, you think of a scorer.
He had another one of those against Virginia. He had I think it was a trip attempt, because as the guy went around the screen, he kicked out his leg. I'm calling it a trip attempt.
Well, I want to talk about the number 2 thing that you think of is him being a scorer. Mm-hmm. And you remember the championship classic that we saw when Duke
he was a
played.
Freshman.
No. That we saw this year.
Oh, in Chicago.
When they played Michigan State. Yes. I mean, the guy was lighting up the scoreboard. He was so good.
Especially from 3.
And that is exactly what I was going to say. To have just 5 points, Grayson Allen, I think that we should be talking a little bit more about, will Grayson Allen and the rest of the cast step up to the plate? Because right now, Marvin Bagley, again, you look in the games that they've lost, he's been the only contributor. Basically, the only contributor. I mean, guys like Carter Jr., guys like Duval, guys like Allen, they're not doing anything. They're not helping this Duke team. They're reasons why Duke has lost. And Marvin Bagley, again, he can only do so much, and he can't be the sole guy to be depended upon for Duke when it comes down the stretch. He's already doing a ton. Like I said, he's chipping in. He's getting his 20 points, his 16 points in the wins, and he's certainly playing well in the losses. It's got to be these other guys. They cannot have close games again. You talk about the Virginia, a team that is apparently very good this year again.
Well, they're well coached.
You can't. Well, they're always going to be well coached under the coach that they have over there. But I think that right now what Duke needs to be more worried about is, do they have the guys in close situations like that, in big games like that, outside of Marvin Bagley? Because we already know what Bagley's most likely going to bring to the table. When it's a close game, when it's a big game, when things are on the line, Bagley is there. What are these other guys doing? Are they putting out as much production as they can? The answer is simply no.
Here's what concerns me about this team is, look at the North Carolina game. We've got Bagley at 34 minutes. Allen has 37. Gary Trent Jr. had 34 minutes. The entire bench, yeah, I know you had a lot of guys play off the bench. The most minutes were White and Bolden at 12 and 14, yet you had 7 total points from your bench. Virginia, 2 guys played, 6 total minutes, didn't have a single point. 2 rebounds were what the collective of them had, only 1 shot between the 2. Then you look at Wake Forest. This was a game that they won by 14. You only have 9 points off of your bench. Go back to Pitt, another big win. You almost win by 30 points. You look at the bench, this was probably the most points that we've seen in some time out of them, and it's right around, if my math is serving me correct, 18 points off the bench. Good amount of points off the bench in that one. Then you go to Miami, only 3 points off the bench. Another Wake Forest game, you get 15 off the bench. However, that's only between 2 players, and that's because O'Connell had 13 points in 15 minutes. Another Pittsburgh win, you get, Robinson gets 10 points off the bench, but then 2, 2, and 8 for the rest of the bench. White didn't even have any points. Then the NC State loss, you only get 4 points. The Florida State loss, you only get 3 points off the bench. And then the Evansville Purple Aces win, where you win 104-40. Well, yeah, of course your bench is going to play some points because they actually played minutes. O'Connell actually played 21 minutes in that game off the bench because you were up by 60 in that one. The thing I worry most about Duke coming into this end of the season and postseason play is, I feel like they are going to be a team when we get to March Madness and the conference tournament games of, unless their starting 5 can go the entire way and be dominant, I don't think they're going to go that far. And the thing I think that is going to come back and bite them in the butt, especially when we get to the conference, the ACC conference tournament, will be most telling, because if you've got guys playing 30-plus minutes per game, that's the time where, I mean, right now you get a few days off. You get that, all right, you get that system of, okay, we're either playing Monday, Wednesdays are the big ones, Saturday. Like, for example, I'll relate it to when both of you and I were in college. The athletes that played for our basketball team, unless it was non-conference play, at this point in the season, it's like, all right, we're either playing on a rare Tuesday night, but usually it's Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's when we're playing, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So you know exactly when your games are going to be because you get that rhythm. They get to the ACC tournament, that's when I'm going to start putting the magnifying glass on them, because if they've got Bagley, Allen, and Trent playing 30-plus minutes and the rest of the starters, not the other 2, not far behind, if you have to play 3 games in 3 days or 4 games in 4 games, that might take a little bit, it might be a little bit more taxing on the team. Or when we get to March Madness, when it's like, all right, we won on Thursday, now we got to get ready to go on Saturday. And I know you get a week off in between those, but how will the stamina be when we get late in the season for the starters?
Well, I think this is something that is odd to me from a Duke team that in a game like Virginia, where you're only having really one guy. You had Bagley with 30, and you had someone else with 14. I can't even remember who had
Wendell.
Okay,
Wendell Carter
had 14 points. Everyone else couldn't even crack double figures in points. That doesn't happen, really. That does not happen for a Duke team, and that is so odd. But what also is interesting is that in points per game, according to ESPN, which they're not always accurate, but according to ESPN, points per game, Duke has just over 90 points per game. That's second in all of college basketball. That's impressive. And I feel like for Duke, they either all come to play and it's 20, 22, 17, 16, 15, or it's 30, 10, 7, 9, and that's what you get.
So it's all or nothing.
It's
is what
all
you're
or
saying.
nothing. That's absolutely what I'm saying. It seems to be all or nothing. But leading it back again to your question that you had originally asked, Marvin Bagley can take this Duke team very far on his own. But it needs to be the rest of the crew. It really does. Because he cannot do every single thing. If a team, especially when you get into the postseason, you get into the tournament, and teams know Marvin Bagley has got to be keyed in on. Can you stop him? No, he's not a stoppable guy. Can you limit him? You could, if you were able to figure that out. But if you're able to figure that out, then you leave it to everyone else. Can they do it? Can they shoulder that? And quite honestly, I don't know if I'd say yes right now. I don't know if I would be able to say yes. Early in the season, I think I'd be able to say, yeah, that'd be just fine. But lately, it doesn't seem that way.
Well, the interesting thing, and I was just pulling up, there's 3 games that I was looking at, is Florida, Texas, Michigan State. These are all caliber teams that Duke could meet potentially, unless we get like an East Tennessee or a VCU or a Butler from when Brad Stevens was there kind of playing Cinderella. But in those games, Michigan State I'm going to use as the anomaly because that was pretty much, and we saw that game live at the UC. Bagley only played 10 minutes because he got poked in the eye, left with 4 points. But also, that was a game where I feel like early on in the season, you don't know what each team is. Like, you're coming in with a brand new group of guys. You don't know exactly what this team is going to be, and you're kind of just feeling it out there, trying to make it work early on. But by the time they played Texas and Florida, they were gelling a little bit. However, when you get to the Texas game, the big thing I look for in that one, yet again, bench only had 4 total points between DeLure and O'Connell. And O'Connell played 29 minutes. 29 minutes, went 1 of 3. Did have 6 boards, so contributed there. 2 assists, a turnover, and only 2 points in that game. They're not getting the bench production. Also in that one, Bamba fouled out of that game, and once Bamba was out, it was open reign for Bagley. Just toss it up. They don't got a big guy down there to guard him, and he was able to just flush it home. And then the third one when they played Florida, only a 3-point victory, had to come back from a deficit in that one. Only have 3 players off your bench play, and you get 11 points. That's the thing that I think is going to kill this team. Not kill it, but will hurt this team in the end, is going to be the depth of this team. Can somebody off the bench contribute, or is it going to be ride or die on the starting 5? Because looking at right now, if the ACC tournament started today, Brandon, Duke would be the 3rd seed. They'd be the number 3 seed right behind Louisville and Virginia. And if we go based off of what the ACC tournament is, top 4 teams get a 2-round bye. So you get the first day, I'm going off of last year. So Tuesday, you get the first round games. The second round is on Wednesday. You automatically get to the quarterfinals. So if you're a top 4 team, and that's Duke, you would basically have to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 games in 3 days. However, here's an interesting thing. With Duke and the games they have, right now, Clemson, as we're recording this, playing a team that we're going to talk about next in North Carolina. Could I get a score up? Do you have a score update for me before I make this point?
It was 30-17.
30-17. So if that score holds, you guys will know the ending before we do. You'll be listening to this after the game. But that could mean Clemson ties. That means Duke 1 loss away. NC State, Florida State, right there at 4 losses. They could have tiebreakers over Duke because they beat them. God forbid Duke falls out of the top, to me, out of the top 4. And Duke fans might be saying, but Ricky, doesn't matter. We were the number 5 seed last year, won the whole ACC tournament. We'll do it again. However, last year's team wasn't like this one. I wasn't saying last year, wow, look at the depth on this team. You don't got any. I was saying, okay, they got some bench players that can come in and play. This year, I'm looking at it and saying, man, if those starters get tired by the time you get a Virginia team on Friday, good luck. You're not beating that defensive team. And that's my worry for Duke is when we get to the postseason, it comes off of matchups. And are they going to run into A, the wrong matchup, and B, be too tired to overcome that matchup?
I think that with what you're saying in terms of being tired and being worn down and everything like that, I think it actually has a lot of merit. And you look at a game like, I'll take the last 2 games just for easy 2 examples, and because it's current. In the game against Virginia, you have 3 guys play the whole game. You have 2 people come in off the bench to combine for 6 minutes and 0 points. You lose that game. You then go into the game against Notre Dame. You win that game by 22 points. You have 6 guys come off the bench. They combine for 7 points. They get decent minutes. White gets 14, Bolden 12. Everyone else kind of chips in 8, 5, 3, 2. But they only have 7 points. They didn't need it. They would have been fine without it. Mm-hmm. But again, do they have, and it goes to your question, do they have the depth? Do they have, okay, anyone can have depth. We could, ask anyone to come in and play, but do you have the talent? How many times do we say that, Ricky, where, you have someone who can come in for you, but are they going to be able to do the same thing you can do? If they can't, well, then you really don't have depth. And the next point is, how tired are they going to be? How worn down are they going to be? Can they match those points? Can they match those minutes significantly? And I don't know. I think that what you're saying it brings up a great point. I think it really makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's something that Duke really has to look at right now and see, especially if they're having 2, 3 guys play the entire game in a really big game, well-fought game, tiresome game, and then say, oh yeah, you're also going to be playing again tomorrow. Mm-hmm. There comes a point when Duke is going to be worn down to the bone and not play up to par with where they should be because they have nothing left in the tank.
No, and that's exactly it. And the one thing that I was trying to find, and of course the webpage wouldn't come up for me because God forbid the NCAA keep a box score from last year, but I pulled up the, which game is this? Was this last year's game? The 77-74 win for Villanova over the Tar Heels. Just to show a little bit of what I'm talking about, you look at this game, and I'm focusing on this national championship game. You look at Villanova, the winning team had their 5 starters play 32, 21, 38, 37, 22. Their bench, they only had 3 guys play, but 10, 25, and 15. And Booth, the guy that played the most minutes off the bench, 20 points for that team. 20 points. You look at NC, who lost that game, they had Bryce Johnson at 31. You had Kennedy Meeks, so this was 2016.
Yeah, this
Kennedy
was not last
Meeks,
year.
you had 21. Justin Jackson, 34. Marcus Page, 34. Barry, 37. Kind of sound familiar what we're looking at? You had Hicks off the bench at 20 minutes, only 4 points.
Yeah.
4 points, 4 rebounds. You had Pinson, 12 minutes, didn't get a single point. James, 2 minutes, didn't get a single point. Britt, 9 minutes, got 2 points. Which team won? The team that had, they only had 3 players off the bench, but they had that player do more with their minutes that they had. I think if Duke is the team, one of these teams, and you had to pick, hey, Ricky, what team is Duke going to be? They're going to be NC State. Or not NC State. They're going to be NC. They're going to be the ones where it's like, man, their bench did nothing. And this kid got 20 minutes off the bench, and he only got that many points. That's what I fear. But I wouldn't be surprised if Duke doesn't make the championship game at all this year.
Bold statement. But I think that... I think that
it wouldn't be a primetime podcast if I didn't make a hot take, Brandon.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I wouldn't want it any other way. But going back to that point of that game is that, again, it was a close game. It was a last-second shot. But I think that you just kind of felt that Villanova, they had it that night. They had that good feel because they had that flow in and out. They had guys that were not tired. They were still feeling good on the floor, everything like that. And that's, there's a lot to be said for that. Duke, however, now going back to my point of view, saying that's a bold statement to make, but for Duke to get there, and you look at an ACC that's actually pretty darn good. You look at a Clemson team that's pretty darn good. You look at a North Carolina team that stinks right now, but they're going to hang around. You look at an NC State team that's caused trouble for Duke and North Carolina. Virginia, of course. Louisville's been played well within the conference. There's some people for Duke to have to go through, and it will be interesting to see how they're able to hold up in terms of, do they have to have everybody out on the floor for the entirety of the game in terms of all 5 starters, most of them go in those 40 minutes, and then having to do that consecutive game after game after game, and can Duke hold up after that? And what kind of effects does that have then going into the NCAA tournament? Well,
and I'll use this because last year's, I don't know why I thought last year was Villanova, North Carolina. Completely forgot that my main pick in that the Zags were in the national championship. But you even look at last year's game, and this will be my last point. The Tar Heels off their bench, 7 total points, and Bradley had 18, May had 10, Britt had 13, and Woods had 3. Basically, I look at that one. Karnowski has a better game. Matthews has a better game. The Zags might win that one. Like, that's what it came down to, was Karnowski got in foul trouble, wasn't out there a lot, only finished with 9. You had Matthews, who had played well for the Zags all year, only had 6. It just, like, Collins off the bench, 14 minutes, but only had 9 points in that game. That's one where I feel like that's what Duke needs. Duke will need, like, hey, we might not have the production off the bench. We got to make sure they have a bad game and their stars don't get the game that they're used to getting. I'm just not confident in the Dukies coming into the end of the season. The regular season, they'll be fine, but postseason and the tournament. Any last thoughts before we move on into NC and the Tar Heels?
To wrap it all up, put a bow on it, Marvin Bagley, again, the title of this, dealing with him. Without him, Duke is not the number 4 team in the country right now. They're not 19-3. They're far worse off, and they are losing a lot more games. They would not be as good without him. I mean, it's simple as that. He has been a huge presence for them. He's been a huge factor for them. He's done a whole lot, and at times he's been their team when other guys just have not been showing up, especially as of late. So Marvin Bagley, he will and can take them far, but he can't be the only one.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. But Brandon, let's move on into our next topic, and we're staying in the state of North Carolina. However, we're moving to a different shade of blue, over to the rival of Duke, and we're looking at the North Carolina Tar Heels, where right now, Brandon, as we are recording this podcast, I'm chalking it up as a loss. Right now, 44-28. They could come back. I'm predicting they're going to lose this game to Clemson, as that is the halftime score as we are recording this right now. But I'm just going to be frank with you, Brandon. Are the Tar Heels in trouble? Are they in trouble this season? Could they fall out of bracketology? Could they fall out of the tournament?
They're in big trouble right now. They're in hot water.
This would be their third straight loss.
Yes, and it will be their third straight loss. I don't see them coming back 44-28, and one of the reasons why I don't see that, and I think that Jay Williams had a really, really good comment about it. It's just that he sees a loss of soul with North Carolina. They just don't have it. It doesn't seem like they've got the passion. It doesn't seem like they have that want, that desire, that let's go get it. And it's been something not really fun to watch, especially now. 3 losses in a row, potentially. And again, I'm just chalking it up as a loss tonight.
Yeah, they're 4-4
against
in
Clemson.
their last 8 too.
And that would put them at 5-5 in the conference, 16-7, 16-7 overall. That's awful. That's awful. They're just not playing well. And the other game, the game when they lost on the road at Virginia Tech, that's the one that really shocked me the most. You know, NC State, people can be like, how do you lose to NC State? Well, it's a rivalry. I know you're at home. You shouldn't lose that game.
Sometimes you play up.
But that one I can understand more so than the game against Virginia Tech, losing 80-69 in the way that they lost. I mean, you talk about, and we just came off of talking about how Duke had, one guy scoring in their loss against Virginia. It's Marvin Bagley, 30 points, and everyone else just kind of dribbles in with nothing. This is like an awful fantasy day because Theo Pinson has 4 points. Johnson has 3. Kenny Williams has 4. And you've now combined the 3 of you for 11 points. Thanks so much. That's like if Derek Carr went out and had 10 points, and then my wide receiver over here, Larry Fitzgerald, had 7, and then over here, my tight end, Greg Olsen, had 2. I know I'm going to lose, even if 2 other guys had really good games. Well, Luke May and Joel Berry had good games, 23 points each, but that was not enough. And then from their bench, they get a whole whopping, what did they end up getting? 10, 12 points off the bench from everybody? Thanks, guys. Way to pitch in. I mean, it was bad. They played so poorly, and it's so frustrating because this is not something that you're used to seeing from North Carolina. I mean, the last time I remember they were this, well, maybe not. They had such a down year. Gosh, I can't remember what year it was, but it seemed like it's been really, really good for North Carolina. Then that year, then they got back on track, and they've been fine since. But this game really kind of says it all right now for the path that North Carolina is taking. This game against Virginia Tech, it really has set the tone for their season. Especially right here, middle of the year, you are playing in your conference some of the biggest games that you need to be able to play well and win, and they are losing them. They are losing these games. And now you're losing to Clemson tonight. Big on the road at Clemson, 44-28 at halftime. Ricky, this team does not have it this year, and they are struggling. They're currently number 4 in Joe Lunardi's bracketology.
Could fall after tonight.
And they will fall after tonight. If they're at 19 right now overall, if things kind of shape up in a way that's against North Carolina, if they lose tonight, maybe they're at 25. Maybe they're at 22. This is a team that is not moving in the right direction.
Let me ask you this. First thing I want to ask you is, are we having this topic today not just because of how they're playing this season, but because this has been a team the last 2 years, 33-7 both years, 14-4 in the conference both years, made the championship game and are 1-1 in the last 2 years, and now look like this? Like, is that playing a little bit to why we might be hitting the panic button right now for the Tar Heels, because of it's like you're up here and then boom, you're falling off the mountain right now?
Well, I think it has to be. It has to be. When you're able to go to these games, these last 2 years, championship game, last 2 years, and win it in one of them last year. I get it. There's and we were, when we had Matt on, what seems like weeks ago, but it was just last week.
And we talked about the Big Ten.
And we talked about the Big Ten and how Wisconsin has fallen so far. This is a team that was pretty darn good.
They just dropped another one to Nebraska over the weekend.
Didn't watch. But I think that, I was surprised at them. Yes, I get it. You lose your senior starters and everything like that. But 10-10, what at the time was 10-10.
Now they're 10-13.
That's awful. That's awful.
Yeah, since we talked about them, they've lost at Rutgers. I know this is NC State or NC. We'll get back to them, but the Badgers have lost. Their last three since the Illinois win: at Iowa, at Michigan State, and then home against Nebraska. They've lost their last three.
The reason I bring them as an example is because North Carolina still has the seniors on their team.
Mm-hmm.
They still have Pinson. They still have May. They still have Barry, Williams. They've got these guys. They're just not meshing.
Mm-hmm.
Something is not working. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if just the other talent is so much better and so much quicker and so much more reluctant to get good shots off and make good shots and everything like that, or what it is. But North Carolina has been uncharacteristically unsuccessful so far this year. The fact that they could fall tonight to 5-5, 500 within the conference is unbelievable. At worst, I would think that they'd be up around where Duke is. 7-3. 7-3 in the conference. Not great. Not bad.
Here's the one thing I'm going to bring up. Let's say they do lose tonight, like both you and I think is going to happen. They'll fall to 5-5. That means they're right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They'll fall to 7th in the ACC right now. The same thing that we did for Duke. If the ACC tournament starts today, they would be the 7th seed, so they would play the second round. First round would happen. They would play the winner between 10 and 15. So the winner between, 7, 8, 9, 10. So Virginia Tech, 11, 12, 13, 14. So Virginia Tech and Pittsburgh. Well, guess what? If Virginia Tech wins, that's a team that's already beat you this season. Then you beat them. Let's say they will beat Virginia Tech. Then you play the 2 seed, which right now would be Louisville. The thing, we don't have a barometer right now on that one because they don't play until February 17th. The rest of this schedule for North Carolina, I do not like. I don't like what I've seen, and I don't like what's coming up because you get Duke twice. You get Louisville once more. You get NC State at NC State. They beat you at home. I'm not confident that you're going to go into Raleigh, North Carolina and get that win even. So that's 4 games I could see you losing, and then Miami could even be a toss-up. So that's 5 games right now. Syracuse will probably be a tough one. That means for me, the only automatic, I'm using air quotes for our audio listeners, automatic wins I have you with are Pittsburgh and Notre Dame. If that happens, Brandon, they will only have 7 wins in the conference. 7 wins. The lowest for Roy Williams since his 5-11 season back in 2009-2010.
That's what it was.
Where, do you remember the national championship game that year? Because it was a doozy. Gordon Hayward played in that game.
It was...
Gordon Hayward had a shot.
Yes, it was... who were they again?
It was in Indy.
Duke.
And... Duke lost. Duke should have lost too.
Duke won.
Should have lost too.
Why am I thinking?
Brad Stevens.
Why? I know. I picked Butler.
There
we go.
That was the national championship.
I'm picturing everything. I'm picturing the shot. I'm picturing my expression when it's going up, and then I pictured my expression when it didn't go in. But yeah, that's the season. I couldn't remember what it was, but that was a bad season. That was a bad season.
20-17 overall, 5-11. Besides that, the lowest a Roy Williams team has done, his first season at 8-8 in the conference, in the ACC. 19-11 overall. They still made the tournament that year, his first year with the Tar Heels after coming over from Kansas. But I don't like the rest of the way because
I don't either.
I don't think they'll beat Duke once this season. I'm sorry. You're not going to beat Duke. You might beat them at home, but I still am going to put Duke with the sweep. I think that Louisville gets you because that one's at Louisville, and I think that NC State's going to beat you. I think you got 4 automatic losses for me for sure. And like I said, I'm not confident at Syracuse or even home against Miami right now. This is a team that, let's see, with 7 wins, I mean, we're eyeballing it here, but with 7 wins at the worst, that would put you 10th. 10th. That means you're falling from, hey, we're playing day 2 to, oh, shoot, we got to play day 1. We got to play day 1 of the ACC tournament and go 5-0 to win the whole thing. And the thing that I also don't like is, let's say we'll go back to 7, because that's where they would be after this Clemson loss. I'm not confident that you'll beat any of the top 4 teams. So it's a one and done in the ACC tournament. Are you going to be a team when you get to the ACC tournament towards like, you know what, we need 2 good wins. We need a win against whoever we get out of 10-15 and a win in the quarterfinals would really sure up. Or is it going to be, well, they won that one, but, they couldn't beat Duke. So, I mean, they're on the bubble. We'll see what happens Selection Sunday. That could very well be the case for North Carolina.
Well, North Carolina right now, the way that they're playing and the way things seem to be shaking up for them and stacking up is certainly the rest of the way out. They may just be a bubble team.
Which is shocking because right now, like you said earlier, they are a 4 line.
They're a 4.
In Joe Lunardi right now. I know Joe Lunardi's not the committee, but Joe Lunardi's pretty good at this.
He's pretty darn good. He's been doing it for a while.
He's been doing it for a while. That he's pretty good at this.
He knows what he's talking about. He has a really good pulse on what's going on, what's happening. But that's what makes me worried is that they're a 4 right now and falling. They're a 4 right now and falling. They lose to Clemson tonight. That 4 is no longer a 4. That's maybe a 5. That's maybe a 6. If you lose to Duke, you keep falling, and you don't want this to be a free fall. Right now,
because I'm free.
It's a good song. It's a good song. But I almost thought about finishing it, and I didn't do it. But Pitt, you need to win at home against Pitt. You've got to do it. You've got Duke at home. You have got to try and play them as best you can in your own place because you know it's going to be difficult going to their place on the road. Then on the road at NC State, like you said, that's going to be even more interesting because of the fact that they beat you at home. Now you've got to go there, and if you could try and do that revenge game and get that one, that'd be great. But there's all these ifs, ands, or but maybe this could happen. They need to just get a whole change of what's going on. I don't know if they need to do a whole players-only meeting. I don't know if Roy's got to go in there and say, guys, we've got to change the attitude. We've got to change the demeanor. We've got to change the thinking. Because right now, again, when you've got a guy like Jay Williams saying that I just don't feel like they just don't have the soul anymore, that's an internal. You've got to look internally for that stuff. You've got to change that. It's not just that you're losing games and you're losing it by this much or that much or whatever. Internally, what's going on? What is the block that you are unable to overcome. And that's, it's one of those things. It's kind of one of those deep down kind of hidden things that you can't necessarily see on the surface. And that's almost where I think North Carolina's at.
You know, it should have been a foreshadowing thing a little bit.
When you lose to Wofford, that's what I think.
79-75. But no, what should have been a little bit of a foreshadowing is, remember what happened before the season even started with Barry?
Yeah.
Where, I'm playing Madden, I got mad, punched a TV screen, I'm out for a while.
I mean, I get it, but it's very stupid to do.
That should have been a red flag of like, that's your upperclassman leader. Punching a TV because he got mad that he lost. Like, it's easy for me to say that now, sitting here at 28. When I was 21 through 24, let's be completely honest, I've broken many controllers whipping them at walls when I die in Call of Duty, or when I couldn't beat a level in Kingdom Hearts, or when I lost the game in Madden, I would do the same. But I was always...
So it sounds like there's just been a couple of times.
Yes. But I was always the person where, I mean, this is going to sound like, take this however you want, but I rather break the controller if I break anything, because that's going to be a lot cheaper than fixing my hand. Fixing my hand or fixing anything of my body, or fixing a TV. A TV is pretty expensive. The controller, now they've gotten expensive. They're like $60-$80 for a PlayStation controller. So I learned to very quickly diffuse my anger. But one thing I was going to bring up, getting back to North Carolina, is you go back before the Virginia Tech loss. So only 2 losses, because we're not counting the Clemson loss because it's still going on as we are recording this. Before the Virginia Tech loss, North Carolina was on the 2 line for Joe Lunardi. They were a 2 in the East. 2 losses, you fall to a 4. So if you take that into consideration, let's say they lose tonight, and then just going through what I said, 5, that's 6 more. So that means you're losing 2 lines for every 2 losses. So basically a line for every loss. So you're a 5, you're a 6, you're a 7, you're 8, you're a 9. They could fall to a 10. And you know what else could really hurt them? And we didn't talk about this with Duke because this isn't going to concern Duke at all because they're going to be a high seed. But with North Carolina, the thing you got to get into is the more games you lose at this stretch and the more lines you fall on that March Madness tournament bracket, you know what could really end up hurting the Tar Heels? When we get to conference tournament and it's like, St. Bonaventure wasn't going to get an automatic bid, but they got an automatic bid, and now they've taken a spot away from a quality team, a Power 5 team, as we would say in football, that could have used that. Like, how many little guys this year are going to win their conference tournament and maybe take spots away that could have gone to a North Carolina team, but because they lost so much, they put themselves in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you bring up, again, you've brought up a lot of good points tonight, Ricky. I've agreed with you a lot tonight. I don't know what's wrong with me. But,
it's a change of pace. It's a real change of pace.
It is. Not really.
Also, I don't mean to rub it in because this is my team, but the Illini are beating Rutgers 41-22.
Wow, that's a huge accomplishment.
For us, I'll take a win. I'll take a Big Ten win at this point. We got one. I'll take another one, please.
But I think you are right, and I think that the fact that Justin Jackson's not there anymore, the fact that Kennedy Meeks is not there anymore, I think
the senior leadership ain't the same.
They're feeling that. They're feeling that right now, and they're missing that a whole lot. That's what I think too. Is that they're missing the presence on the court of both of those guys. I'm sure they're missing it off the court as well.
Well, any final thoughts before we move on into the NFL draft?
Yeah, this is very disturbing. I really hate seeing North Carolina in this position, and as many people may like seeing North Carolina in this position, it is a strange one for them to be in, especially when you have a Roy Williams coach team. He's one of my favorite and best coaches, I think, in the game right now. And it's just so odd to see a team of his be 5-4, potentially 5-5 in the conference and struggling at this point in the season.
Well, I'll say this at the end of the segment, didn't say at the beginning. This is your team. So you got a little bit of an attachment there with this one, because just like Alabama is your team for football, this is your basketball team. This is the one that you root for the Tar Heels, and it's kind of similar to your football team that you root for, that it's either you like the Tar Heels or you hate the Tar Heels. I haven't met many people that are like, the Tar Heels, they're okay. It's either you're on one side or the other. It's the same thing with like Duke too, but it's the same thing with Alabama football as well. This is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Is North Carolina in trouble? How do you see the rest of their season going? Will they make the tournament? And if they do, what seed do you think they will be? Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. But Brandon, let's go ahead and close the podcast. Moving now into the NFL draft. And this is going to be a fun one, because next week we have our second big board for the NFL draft. And this is a prospect on our first big board. Unless I am mistaken, both you and I believe, had him as the number one prospect on our big board the first go around. And we're talking about Saquon Barkley, the running back out of Penn State. And the thing I want to talk about here is basically, could he be the number one pick in the NFL draft? Because right now, you look at the last mock draft for MVP, Mark and I both had quarterback going 1, quarterback going 2, Darnold and Rosen. However, the news that I'm hearing is that right now the Colts at 3, they really like Saquon Barkley, and they're thinking about either a Bradley Chubb or a Barkley at 3. However, could the Cleveland Browns pull a fast one and basically take Barkley number 1, let the Giants figure out, hey, whatever quarterback you want to take, and then the Colts, trade to whoever wants to take another quarterback. We'll be fine between basically Darnold, Rosen, and Allen. We'll take the third one at 4. What are your thoughts on that? Could Barkley be the first name we hear called when the Browns come to the podium on draft night?
Yes, and I think he should. And I think that because what is Cleveland, and I'm not saying that one guy can save a franchise. It's just hard to ever do that or really say that this guy saved this franchise by himself. But what is it that Cleveland needs? I mean, outside of wins, what is it that they need? They need a playmaker. They need a playmaker. And instead of trying to take a quarterback at number 1 and try and put him as the playmaker, why not get Saquon Barkley, who can be that playmaker all over the field, whether it's a kick returner, a punt returner, a wide receiver, a running back, make him quarterback. That's what the Cleveland Browns need. They need a playmaker, a spark plug. Saquon Barkley would be just that, and I think it would behoove the Cleveland Browns to go after him and take him number 1 and pick him up so you have him. Because there is no, just because you have multiple picks in the first and second round doesn't mean that you can afford to wait on him. Because he is so good. Because there are reports that, hey, I could tell you the Cleveland Browns need a running back. The New York Giants need a running back. The Colts need a running back. The Broncos need a running back. Just because there's 2 teams behind you and then you again doesn't mean that you can afford to wait and assume that Barkley will be waiting for you at number 4. And quite honestly, I don't think it's really all that important to go after a quarterback right away, only because you're going to get one. Well, you're going to be fine. You've already done this whole go after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. I remember you sat in this room, you did a video about all the quarterbacks that they've had. That really hasn't panned out for you. Well, so why don't you go in a different direction? Also, I want to complete this thought, and I'm almost done. If you're Cleveland, why don't you go and try and offer one of these top picks to someone like the Redskins?
Don't trade those picks, Brandon.
Who don't seem to really care about their quarterback.
Don't trade them.
And take their quarterback.
Here's what I think should happen, and you can also hear this a little bit. Check out the Onside Kick this week for we talked about best fits for Josh Allen. Here's what I think would be beneficial to the Cleveland Browns. Take Saquon number 1. The reason why, you hit on it. Between 1 and 4, there's a better chance of you still getting a quarterback at 4 than Saquon still being at 4. Because the Colts, I have always thought about, like, the last mock draft we did, I thought about having Barkley go to the Colts, but I didn't. I still kept, I'm like, you know what? Ballard's going to go with a pass rusher. He's going to go at Bradley Chubb. But now that they're bringing in Josh McDaniels, why wouldn't McDaniels say, you know what? Let's take pressure off of Luck. I need something I can work with, either offensive line or a running back. Frank Gore, great job. You did a great job for us. You're too old to get out the door. We're not
just go and retire.
You.
Just go and retire.
Or go play for a team that still needs a running back. There's numerous of them. He could find a job easily. Go ahead and draft Barkley. If the Colts are thinking about Barkley, then the Browns need to take him number 1, because another thing I look at is, here's what's going on in my mind right now, and I don't know if I'm going to have this for the next mock draft, but I'm thinking about it. Barkley goes number 1. Then the Giants come on the clock. They get their pick between Rosen, Darnold, Allen, Baker Mayfield. I think they would go Josh Rosen or you know what, they could go basically Rosen or Darnold is what I'm thinking. Then what the Colts do is I think the Colts trade their pick. They trade back. They do a John Lynch thing, either the Jets or the Broncos. Probably the Broncos, because John Elway's probably like, shit, I didn't expect Josh Rosen to still be on the board. Trade up, he gets Josh Rosen. So basically how I'm looking at it right now, Browns get Barkley number 1. Darnold goes to the Giants because, hey, you know what? He's got the more potential out of him and Rosen, and we still got Eli. He can sit behind Eli. We won't have any pressure to start. Rosen might have pressure before Darnold has pressure. Then you have the Broncos trade up with the Colts they would swap first-round picks, and the Colts would get some more picks, and then the Broncos would go ahead and take Josh Rosen. Guess who's sitting there at number 4? Guess who is sitting there right at number 4? Josh Allen. Browns take a quarterback if they truly want it right there at number 4. And the thing that I think, and this is kind of, I kind of was thinking in my head, like, should I say this? Should I not? Right now, because the big thing I'm doing right now, and I mentioned this during the onside kick, I've begun the homework for our film breakdown videos. Watched Rosen, I've watched Darnold, I've watched Allen. That's where I am in the process with the quarterbacks. And watching Allen, from what I've seen, the number one thing that I noticed from his film, I was like, dude is deceptive when it comes to play action. There were so many times he would throw the ball out there, slickly keep it to himself, get the linebacker to jump, get a safety to jump, get somebody to jump because they think the running back has the ball and he can throw it down the field. What kind of a play action threat would that be? Would a quarterback with that skill, with a threat like Saquon Barkley? Basically, you're saying, hey, we got a really good play action quarterback and we got a threat at running back that people can't sleep on. That people can't say, you know what, go for Allen, because they're not going to give it to the running back. That's what you get if Isaiah Crowell is your running back, not if Saquon Barkley is your running back. The Allen-Barkley pair could be a good one for the Browns, and that's why I would say take Barkley at number 1 if I'm the Browns.
Why do you say don't trade your picks?
Don't trade them? Because I would say for the Browns, you need the 1 and the 4. Take Barkley, take your quarterback, get them together. I don't think Deshaun Kaiser's the answer. I don't think he's the answer. I know it's only been 1 year. I don't think he's the answer. I think Cody Kessler's time is done. I don't think Hogan is the answer either. That is why I wouldn't personally trade the picks.
Well, I don't think that any of them are the answer either, but how many times are the Cleveland Browns going to burn themselves by taking rookie quarterbacks that do not pan out? How many times do you think they looked at film and they saw, oh man, this guy's good. He's got this, he's got that, and then it turned out to be Brandon Weeden. You know, I mean, how many times do you think that happened to the Cleveland Browns? Well, I can tell you a lot, and it wasn't good. So that's why I said, and not, I mean, that was just off the cuff.
Yeah,
trade it. Try and get somebody who's looking to deal a quarterback and who's not really willing to. I mean, let's be honest. There is tension between Cousins and Washington. There is.
He's not going to go to Cleveland. He'll go to a team like Minnesota that could win.
Of course,
no.
He'll go to Minnesota.
I'm not saying exactly Minnesota, but I'm saying a team like Minnesota, a team like Denver, where they can sell him on, hey, you can win a championship here. You can't win a championship in Cleveland.
Well, quite frankly, he'd have no choice if he's traded.
Well, yeah, that if they franchise tag him and trade him.
But that's what I'm saying is I'm not saying that necessarily has to be Cousins, but why not? You know, there's a number of other teams who I think would be willing to possibly trade a quarterback. You know, if they were able to, maybe. But the reason I'm saying that, and it's a little out there, and I understand that, and I agree that it's a little out there, but why, if you're the Cleveland Browns, there is no time like the present to be a little creative, to be a little shifty, you know, and try something new, do something a little different, go outside the box, outside of what you've normally done, which has led you to 0-16.
Here's one thing I'm going to throw out there to be devil's advocate to that. And I know it's one example, but to me, the biggest mistake they've made in recent years. If they trade one of these picks, what was it, 2 years ago? The Rams trade with the Titans. Rams get the #1 pick. Everyone's like, the Rams are going with Jared Goff. I'm sitting there going, great. The Browns get Carson Wentz. The Browns are going to have their quarterback of the future, and it's traded to Philly. They traded the pick to Philly. Why did they trade the pick to Philly? Did they not want that quarterback? And now I know hindsight's 20/20, and look at Carson Wentz before he got injured. Look at Jared Goff in LA, but we knew the Rams were going to draft Goff. That's the quarterback that they liked. Part of me says don't trade the pick because it's like you're in a catch-22. Do we go for the drafting another quarterback like we always done? Or it's like, hey, look at this. We didn't draft a quarterback, and he actually panned out to be pretty decent right now.
But it would have been different if they would have traded the pick to get somebody to fill their quarterback role and position,
not just more picks.
And not just more picks where they could screw it up. That's what I'm seeing as the difference.
If you're trading for Kirk Cousins, then I say, okay, you can trade it.
If I'm the Cleveland Browns, truly, because you have so many picks within the first and second rounds, you get Saquon Barkley #1. Okay, good. There's one thing off the list. You got the #1 wish list item.
And then look to trade the 4th.
Look to trade the #4 for someone who is willing to give you a quarterback that they already have on their roster.
I completely forgot the whole reason why they have the #4. Not only did they say, no, we don't want Carson Wentz. We'll trade with you.
They didn't want Deshaun Watson.
Part of me feels like it's one of those things where it's like, will the Browns ever get it right? It's like, we're going to draft a quarterback. He's a dud.
The Browns would get it right if they went with Saquon Barkley at #1. They would certainly get it right there. But the reason why I'm saying is trade the pick is I'm not saying to trade it for more picks. I'm saying to trade it specifically, shop it for someone else's quarterback on their team.
And I want to bring it back to Saquon Barkley for a second. Because the whole thing with me is, we both agree, take him #1.
Absolutely.
If you're the Browns.
Absolutely.
You want to know it's another thing that I sit back and think why they should take him #1? Do you remember, or I know it's recent, but do you know who's going to be the new offensive coordinator in Cleveland now? He's coming over from Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah, Todd Haley.
Todd Haley. Who did Todd Haley have for 3 of his 4 years? I want to say it was 4 years. I'm sorry. For 4 of his 5 years in Pittsburgh, Who was his running back that was drafted in 2013? Kind of a little holdout situation of
Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell. Why not get Todd Haley, who I'm looking right now at an article from, where's this article from? From morningjournal.com for Cleveland. The headline says Todd Haley will change scheme and call plays as the Browns' new offensive coordinator. If he's calling the plays, he's changing the scheme, because obviously Hugh Jackson's scheme didn't work of a run-first offense. If he's doing that, why not get him a running back that could be used, not exactly, because, I mean, Saquon's a little bit shorter than Le'Veon, but a back that they can use as, one, their main running option, and two, as a receiver out of the backfield. Here's another thing, and this is why I was kind of like, right away, don't trade the pick. Because in my head, I was thinking Josh Allen would be there at 4. And the thing with Josh Allen, and people, like, the reason why I'm saying this now is I'm beta testing it. Where, like I said, I'm doing the homework for the draft breakdowns, and one of the parts in the draft breakdown video will be a pro comparison. And I'm beta testing this pro comparison with you guys watching and listening. I was watching Josh Allen's film, and you know what he looked like to me? A skinnier Big Ben. Same size, they're both 6'5". Skinnier Big Ben. That's what he looked like to me. Like how, and I know the NFL is a different, like the guys are bigger, faster, stronger in the NFL. However, watching him, they'd come in to sack him, and he's hard to take down. Watching him get away from somebody trying to take him down and throw. And I'm like, at first I'm like, I've seen this before. Who have I seen? What quarterback have I seen like this? And then it hit me. I'm like, it's Big Ben. He's just skinnier, doesn't have the same size. He's about, I want to say like what, 10 to 15 pounds. And that's me spitballing off the top of my head, 10 to 15 pounds lighter than Big Ben, but they're both 6'5". They both have the same height. Why not match? You're basically getting then the quarterback that could play a similar style to Big Ben, who has a tremendous, his accuracy is not the best, but he's got all the arm strength in the world. And then you pair Todd Haley up with a running back also, like Saquon, who could be his Le'Veon in Cleveland. All you need then is your AB, and that could be Josh Gordon. I mean, Josh Gordon could be, I'm not saying like same caliber, but he could be your number one wide receiver in Cleveland, either him or Corey Coleman.
You know, I think you said that perfectly and laid that out perfectly. But I think it's my feeling a lot of times with the draft is it is all the time. You're always taking a chance on these guys. Always.
I mean, look at Ryan Leaf.
You don't know if they're going to pan out. Saquon Barkley, who is one of the best athletes and was one of the best in college, could pan out to be an absolute dud. I do not expect that in the slightest, but he could. And that's why when I look at that, I look at the draft and I think we just truly never know.
Is there a chance?
We truly never know.
Is there a chance that Saquon doesn't pan out?
Like there's always a chance. There's always a chance.
That's not injury based. Like in your crystal ball, could you see a future where Saquon goes maybe top 5 and it's like, man, Saquon, he's good, but like they drafted him top 5 and he's not Zeke, he's not Fournette, man. Because I'm looking at it on the other side where I see what we saw in Zeke 2 years ago. I see what we saw what Fournette does last year. I think like Mark hit the nail on the head before we were recording yesterday of the days of yesteryear where you get Mel Kiper. Don't take a running back in the first 21 is too big to take a running back. That's not what Mel Kiper sounds like. I just do that voice for everybody. However, like you get Mel Kiper and he'd be up there. I don't know why they took Melvin Gordon at 21. It's way too high. We're 3 years. This could be the 3rd year in a row we get a top 5 running back.
Honestly, in my crystal ball, Saquon Barkley is going to be worth it. He's going to be worth every bit of it. I mean, I think that he's really going to pan out. I think it's because he does so much. He's not limited to just running the football. You can put him anywhere pretty much on the offensive side, outside of the offensive line, and I think he's going to be just fine. Maybe tight end. But I don't foresee Saquon Barkley being a bust in any capacity. Even though he's going to Cleveland, I don't see him being a bust. Even though Cleveland needs a lot of things, I think him going there, it's going to help. Like I said at the kind of the top of the segment, they need playmakers, and that's why I would forego going quarterback at number 1, knowing you'll get a quarterback at number 4 if you truly want one. You'll get a true playmaker at number 1 with Saquon Barkley. And I think it comes to, with the quarterback, and so there's been so much turnover in Cleveland at quarterback, at head coach, at GM. I feel like with what Cleveland's got right now in their GM, they've got somebody who is able to analyze talent. They've got somebody who is very, very strict and diligent in looking at talent and being able to make a decision and make it be a good decision. I really do think Cleveland is done with this crap of the past and how poor they've been and how poor they've played. And I really do believe, and I have some confidence now in the Cleveland Browns in terms of they are trying to turn this organization around. And I will truly believe that they believe that if they take Saquon Barkley at number 1.
Well, and the last thing I'll throw out, and this is a little bit away from Saquon because both you and I have agreed they should take him number 1 overall, but the Senior Bowl that we talked about last week, where first off, I got to throw out, you were the one that mentioned Rashad Penny needs a big day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a big day at the Senior Bowl, had a big touchdown for the side that he was on. I can't remember if he was North or South. I think he might have been on the South team. But one guy who had a good game was the quarterback out of Richmond. I'm going to screw up this name, so I'm going to preface this right away. Kyle Luletta had a big game. A lot of people impressed with him, FCS quarterback. Could you see the Browns, let's say they Saquon Barkley, number 1 overall, they do what you say and trade the 4th pick, but they don't get a Kirk Cousins. Could you see them going with a quarterback like Luletta, who might have had a good Senior Bowl, or a Luke Falk, or like, yeah, we'll take someone in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round and not take a Baker Mayfield or a Josh Allen at number 4?
This new guy that you mentioned, I don't know who that is. Yeah. So I don't think I could with honesty actually say him because I don't know anything about him. But the name that you mentioned, the Luke Falk, maybe a Luke Falk. And what maybe the Cleveland Browns need to do is not take one of those top quarterbacks.
Because of the pressure that's associated with them usually?
Not even necessarily that. And I know that people will be like, Brandon, come on. But where was Tom Brady drafted? Tom Brady was not a top 5 pick. Tom Brady was not a first 3-round pick.
Russell Wilson.
I mean,
Aaron Rodgers.
Look at some of these guys. I think that you do not always have to get that top of the line coming out of college, quote unquote, guy, because you can find good players later on in the draft.
Aaron Rodgers was still 1st round. I know that, but I'm just saying he was like 20s was when he was drafted. Because I know someone in the comment section would say, but Ricky, he was still a 1st rounder. The exact stat line for Kyle Luletta, just because I don't know if you knew his stat line from the Senior Bowl.
No.
8 of 12 on the day, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns, no INTs.
That's not too bad.
I know it's one game. I know it's the Senior Bowl. Like Josh Allen had, he went 9 of 13, 158, 2 touchdowns on the day, where Baker Mayfield went 3 of 7, only for 9 yards, and his team got a field goal on that drive that he had. However, Baker Mayfield wasn't exactly sure if he was even going to play in the game that he had. So any final thoughts on not Baker Mayfield, on Saquon Barkley and being number 1 overall in the NFL draft?
Can I be honest with you? Is that it really necessarily doesn't have so much to do with Saquon Barkley, but I'm actually excited for the Cleveland Browns. I feel like the Cleveland Browns this year could actually really help their team 5-10 years down the line.
Is Hugh Jackson the coach at the end of the year?
Yes, I do think so, because if they bring in Todd Haley, offensive coordinator, I think he's a good offensive coordinator. Him and Ben didn't get along towards the end. That's okay. But You have Hugh in there at head coach. You have Todd Haley, proven track record for being a good offensive coordinator. You bring in the playmaker of Barkley. You bring in a quarterback, a new quarterback, a fresh quarterback, and hopefully, hope to God, Cleveland Nation, it's the right guy. And then you bring in a cornerback, a defender, I feel hopeful for Cleveland, and I may be the only one feeling that way, but I really do believe that they could do a lot of good things right here. They just have to pull the trigger, and I think they will.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Could Saquon be number 1 overall? Should he be number 1 overall? And let us know also what you think about anything we talked about today on the podcast if you're listening to it in full. Housekeeping here at the end. If you like what we did, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Also down in the description with that link, you can find the information to get yourself an MVP t-shirt. Make sure to give the Primetime Podcast a 5-star rating on iTunes. And make sure to check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. The camera is shutting off. We went over, Brandon, on the time, so you're looking at the logo. But that's enough. That's all I need. As always, guys, have a good day, everybody.